Good morning and welcome to Budget Model Railways. So you'll be familiar with this little layout. I've done a couple of videos on it. At the end of the video I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the 3D locos I've done as well, so worth hanging on for that. So I built this layout and I was really pleased with it. I like the little settings, the fuel yard. Oh, my camera's just done its usual wonky thing. As a simple little ingle nook, it worked very well. And it had this little short fiddle yard off to there, which worked very well. The little goods trains could rumble off, and that's what I wanted. It was all self-contained. However, I then went and built these little rail buses. Bear with me a second. I'm trying to use the tripods because I know it gets a little bit hand shaky when I do it with my hands, but you can't get in close with the tripod because of the space. So I built these, which is a little diesel rail bus. Let's just see if I can run it backwards and forwards. So that's built on Kato chassis, and I'll come back to that in a little while. But what that meant was I could run a little bit of a service into here. I could have passenger trains coming in and out, as well as the goods trains, and that really meant I needed a little bit of a fiddle yard. So relatively simple. I didn't have any timber exactly right. A couple of bits of old drawer shelf there and a bit of hardboard glued together. Some set track, the last of the set track actually I've got lying around, and the last Pico point. I had a few trouble with the track pins, didn't like the hardboard very much, so actually I've just used some double-sided tape there. And for the moment, I've just taped an Oxford box on as the buffer stop, but I'll do something a bit neater. Improvise, adapt and overcome. And that just enables me then to run the goods train off and the passenger train back in and change things around a bit, because I've also got a little single car rail bus. I actually built that first. So these are a 3D printed body that we did, but I've improved it by adding a cardboard roof and lots of white card trim, painted the lower body to make the body look like it comes down lower, picked out axle boxes and things like that. And I did that as a single car because I had a chassis that was missing its couplings. The only trouble with the Kato chassis is the couplings are a bit fragile, or put another way, I'm a bit clumsy. And then I did a two car by simply making another one car that happened to have a coupling. And then this is a Pico 15-foot wagon kit. I used to buy them years ago. I've got loads of them when they were £4 or £5 each. They're a bit more than that now, but they're the same size effectively as the Kato chassis. So it means that you can make a little two car there. So that's the fiddle yard. Excuse the shaky stuff. And then I wanted some lights, and I know lots of people use these now. My wife's got one as a reading light, but I actually saw them at a show a few years ago. Matthew at the Shunting Club had them. They're very good. They just plug into a USB and really simple. I just screwed a piece of wood on the back of the fiddle yard and the clamp goes there, and then it lights the layout. So when I'm sitting shunting and running trains, I've got a little bit of light. And that works really well for me. This layout now with the fiddle yard means I can run a bit of a scheduled service, and I might try doing a video a bit later on timetables, things like that. Oh, and then the other little thing I've done, because I could now run two rail buses, I've added the very continental style platform in the middle, which works quite well. It gives it that slightly European look, which means I can have a rail bus either side. And I did say I would talk about the 3D locomotives. So there we go. That's my 3D locomotive fleet. That's the original one, what I call a Type 1. That was built on the first Kato chassis. So it's all right, but it's not as smooth and reliable as the newer ones. But it does look very nice. It was quite a nice paint job I did on that originally. And I've picked out the axle boxes, added some yellow buffer beams, handrails, number boards from spare Kato locos. And then the next loco we actually built was that one, which was the Type 2. And that was to go on the newer chassis, which was wider, which is why we got the wider bonnets. And they obviously run really well, exceptionally well. Because I tend to break the couplings, I can glue spare ones on, but they're longer. So Doug designed me some thicker buffer beams. So that's what I call a Type 2 bis, or B, I believe, is what that translates as. So I've got two of those. We did do a Type 3, which wasn't very successful. It used the Bobo chassis, which again is a bit unreliable. They're quite fragile. So we designed this, which is a Type 4, again to fit the 11109 chassis. And I quite like that colour scheme. I've gone through 3 colour schemes now. I like the pale blue, but I do like the dark rich blue and the grey and the black and the yellow. That comes out quite nicely. And then obviously I've got my rail buses. So not a bad little fleet there. 4 diesels and a couple of rail buses. You know, all of which cost me £25 each for the chassis, because obviously we don't have to pay for the bodies. Even if you've got to buy the bodies, it's 35 quid each. They paint up quite nice, they're really reliable, and they work very well on a little small layout. Little bit of news, I'm actually working on a big shunting layout in N-gauge, down the other end of the scale from this. And I'll do a video on that in probably the end of the week, when I've got some more of the bits that I can talk about. But that's going to be something a little bit radical and different, so watch out for that. So there we go. I'm very pleased with this layout at the moment. Now I've got a fiddle yard, some lighting, and some rolling stock and locos. It's all coming together rather nicely. Whatever you're doing with your model railways, I hope you're enjoying it. I hope it's going well, and speak to you soon.